Let me pull this up right here. I have this poll from Civics I love showing. Black Lives Matter. Opposition support. General sentiment. People may start rioting this weekend over Amir Locke being shot and killed by police. And you know what? I don't want people to get hurt. I don't want there to be riots. I don't want people to riot. I don't want people to get shot by cops. But you know what, Democrats, establishment media? If you do this, you will face such a reckoning, man. Take a look at this. This is among all voters. Or is this all voters? No, this is independent voters. Sorry. Before George Floyd died, support for Black Lives Matter among independent voters was at 41% and opposition was 28%. After George Floyd died, 51% of independent voters supported Black Lives Matter. Then the riots happened. And the support started to completely crash. Then Jacob Blake got shot. After the Derek Chauvin trial, Black Lives Matter support dropped dramatically and opposition rose dramatically. Right before, check this out, right before the Ahmaud Arbery verdict, opposition was going down and support was going up. And then right after the verdict, opposition went up. So these people want to come out and they say, oh, Ahmaud Arbery and these people, he was jogging and they lynched him. Why do independent voters now oppose you more following that verdict? Well, because people were lied to.
Correct. That's exactly where I was going to go. It's because people were lied to. I mean, look, and at the end of the day, no one, if you find something that's wrong, sure, let's go ahead. We're a nation of laws. I think that the lawlessness that the left basically promotes with these quote unquote protests, which are actual riots, no one can get behind that, and that loses support. And especially whenever there's some type of a jury that sees the case and actually renders a verdict on it, they feel that justice has been rendered. And so the continuation of lawlessness doesn't actually increase the awareness to your cause. It actually denigrates it because it's just lawlessness justifying lawlessness.
If Democrats want to preserve whatever votes they might get, they need to come out right now and say, do not protest. Do not
You mean
riot.
Like President Trump when he said, go home peacefully,
Yep.
But yet somehow that was inciting violence?
Dude, Trump was up against the military-industrial complex. He had a challenge. These guys are on the side of that thing, and they're trying to manipulate the voters only. Trump was trying to manipulate everybody, and not in a mean or cruel way, just manipulate in general.
Trump was trying to be the voice of the people, and people didn't like it because they thought that how can a billionaire be the voice of the people? But the reality was that that's exactly what he was trying to do. He was trying to build the middle class. He was trying to hold our adversaries accountable. He was trying to stop our trade imbalances because, I mean, the guy is the art of negotiation. And he became from the art of negotiation to the art of peace deals. I mean, you look at the Abrams Accord, you look at all the different things that he was doing. So, again, this is, he did more in 4 years than most do in 8.
It's remarkable how Donald Trump gets attacked for that by the establishment left. Once again, they're like, well, these deals are actually bad. And it's like, you know what, man? It is. We are truly living in a period of psychosis.
You're
but
right.
let me just stress, I love civics because you can see that independent voters.
This is brilliant, by the way.
They tend to reflect Republicans. So when we talk about which side is truly right, well, independent voters and Republicans agree with each other for the most part. I think it's fair to say, at the very least, the majority of people disagree with the establishment Democrat worldview. And I think it's fair to say, based on simple research, like they lied about all of these things. Hands up, don't shoot. Talk about a lie. You know that story, Ian? That Michael Brown had his hands up and that the Darren Wilson, I think was the name of the cop, was that the cop? Mm-hmm. Shot and killed him. And they started marching out their hands up, don't shoot. And then the Obama's report comes out showing he didn't have his hands up. In fact,
he actually
probably
rushed the
charging
cop.
the cop.
Eric Holder's Justice Department, he rushed the cop and he reached for his gun. He literally committed suicide.
Are we talking about the same Eric Holder who was responsible for Fast and Furious, which was actually putting weapons into the hands of cartels that are being utilized against our CBP today?
So if the Democrat voter wants to believe those lies and live in Wally world, by all means, go ahead and do so. But if they want to get violent and start fighting, as they've been doing, we got a very serious problem.
Yeah.
It was not a right-wing Trump supporter who went into Portland and shot and killed a Bernie supporter. It was the other way around.
That's right.
It was a Black Lives Matter supporter with a tattoo on his neck who shot and killed the Trump supporters walking down the street.
Well, I mean, think about it. Look at the Antifa.com website. Where does it actually take you to? Well, during the campaign, when you would type in Antifa.com, it would actually take you over to one location. But my point is, though, we know who the intolerant actually support, and they support Democrats more than they support the conservatives. I mean, we've seen that time and time again.
The liberal economic order.
No, to be fair, Antifa.com was likely purchased by someone on the right, and then
Understood.
redirected it to, what was it, Joe Biden?
Well, it was done by Joe. It was supporting Biden Harris, and now it actually auto links to the WhiteHouse.gov.
Corey, when you're in the military, what was it like knowing that we're part of this liberal economic order and the military-industrial complex is out there, and but it's still important. I understand the value of the U.S. military. We really can make the world a better place. We can preserve a lot of goodness. But what was it like psychologically?
Well, I got to be honest with you. When you're serving in the military, I'm not thinking about the industrial complex. I'm not thinking about GD, Lockheed Martin, or any of the other. When we're going through these military trainings and we're sitting here looking at cohesiveness and we're looking at our brothers to the left and right of us, you're not thinking about any of these things. You're only thinking about keeping one another safe. You're only thinking about the fact that, again, I tell people this all the time. It's not the boots, it's the suits. Whenever something goes wrong and these wars are being volunteered and, voted on, it's not us who are sitting in the military who are actually voting on these things. We're just out there to basically follow orders and be able to try and go ahead and do what we thought is the right thing, which is to provide protection for our constitutional liberties and freedoms, or to help free the oppressed. The old special forces de oppresso liber mentality. So as someone who was in the military, I wasn't thinking about the industrial complex. I wasn't thinking about these generals looking at their $1 million boards after they get done retiring. I was thinking about making sure that my guys who are in my team were going to be safe on the ground. That was it.
People complain about just following orders, but it's like, can you even have a military if people don't just follow orders?
Well,
look, so here's the thing. I'm one of those people that if you tell me, go out and kill these children and, we're just telling you to do it, so you should do it. No, I'm not going to do that. I mean, it's not blindly following orders. It's looking at the facts. So let's just say, as an example, regardless of the reasoning for the Iraq War, regardless of the falsified documentation or the anthrax or the WMD, whatever the case may be, we did know for a fact that Saddam ran in a tyrannical rule. We did know that there was Shia that were being just slaughtered, at random. We did see the Halabja incident with the Kurds. We did see. So it's like, you're still eliminating a bad guy, right? The problem with America is that not that we're, going in and eliminating terrorists or bad guys. The problem was that we thought that we could actually create democracy. This nation building thing is the biggest quagmire that the Bush administration ever put us into. And it was the biggest mistake. And that was to prop up the industrial complex.
Let me ask you about these the police we've been seeing as of recent with what's going on in the convoys, the cops arresting that 78-year-old man, but also the Black Lives Matter protests. You've obviously got the left. They've been screaming abolish the police for the past 2 years for really stupid reasons. But after a while, I started saying the same thing. Because not only did we see, obviously within the riots, they weren't shutting them down. They weren't prosecuting. They weren't arresting. Sometimes they were, but for the most part, the justice system was not going after these people. They were getting a free pass. They got a free pass on January 17th, 2020. January 6th, these people get rot in solitary. But when we saw the police shut down small businesses, when we saw the police defend Black Lives Matter murals that were painted illegally with seizure of taxpayer money, at that point, I'm just like, maybe they're right. Maybe they've shoved it in our face that the police will aid and abet the theft of taxpayer funds for political messaging. The police will shut down private business in violation of the Constitution. Why would these cops just follow these orders, even though they're not only unconstitutional, but in many ways illegal outright? And why would I even bother supporting them at this point?
Well, a lot of them, and I think we were talking about this earlier, actually. We were talking about the fact that a lot of the really good ones, they did leave. They ended up going somewhere else. But you're only seeing this issue in Democrat-controlled cities where you already have a corrupt mayor. Because remember, it's not the law enforcement that's usually the ones who are the issue. They are law enforcement. They are not legislators who are actually creating these laws or creating these types of regulations and things that they're trying to enforce. But the problem is that then the people who oppose it, they just leave the cities and they go to another place and they go, hey, look, I know that this mayor is trying to impose something which is, against something that I'm willing to adhere to. And those cities just crumble from that point.
Yeah, but,
I see your point. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I'll tell you the story I tell everybody. It was when I was buying my first gun. I was in New Jersey at the time. It's very difficult to get a gun. It took several months. It took like 6 months, actually, because they were lying to me about how to do it. Should have just went to the gun shop in the first place. But there was a woman.
Should have been a Florida resident.
Should have been a Florida resident in the first place. Well, West Virginia, we got constitutional carry. So this woman from Pennsylvania, where you're allowed to have guns, was going to Atlantic City. She wanted to go gamble. She was like an older, middle-aged woman, maybe even in her 50s. And she crossed the bridge. She gets pulled over for like a taillight or something. And then when the cop walks up, her thinking I'll be responsible, like I was told, politely informs the officer that she does have her concealed carry with her, just so that he knows. And he said, okay, step out of the vehicle, ma'am. Put your hands behind your back. And she's shocked what's happening. He goes, you're under arrest. It's a felony possession. You're not allowed to carry a gun in New Jersey. Why did that officer do that? Why didn't that officer just say, ma'am, It's 5 minutes back to Philadelphia. You're going to turn around. I'm going to escort you to the bridge. Do not bring a gun into New Jersey. It's a crime. Instead, he was like, I think this woman should go to prison for 4 years. Yeah, that sounds about right to me. This is a regular cop. He's not dealing with a riot. He's not stressed out. He just decided upon himself, yeah, maybe this is an egregious, unconstitutional law, but far be it from me. I'd rather this woman go to prison for 4 years than...
Totally with you. I mean, let's just play devil's advocate for a minute, though. Let's say that this young officer who probably hadn't been out of the academy very long, let's just go ahead and throw that out. He's looking at it going, all right, so I've got body cam. My supervisor is going to look at this, and I have an option to either enforce the law because he was in the right of enforcing the law, or if I don't and I do the right thing, which is probably to say, hey, you know what, let's turn you back. I'm going to lose my job, which means I can't feed my family, which means my kids. Look, I mean, we have to look at all the things. I mean, these law enforcement officers, first off, a lot of them are on $35,000 a year, $40,000 a year to risk their lives. I get and I mean, I understand your point, but so
does
it change if that's, instead of it being a 60 or 70-year-old, does it change if it's a 20-year-old? Does it change if it's a 19-year-old? Does it change?
Not as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, that's my point.
There's no justification for someone.
This is why constitutional carry needs to be across all 50 states. This is a constitutional right to bear arms.
I agree.
This shouldn't even be in discussion.
The issue here is a cultural problem, that you would have someone fresh out of the academy be like, I would rather this woman go to prison for 4 years than me lose my job. I mean, that to me is evil.
But we don't live in a society of us or them. I mean, that's exactly what the good for thee, not for me, socialist leftist mentality is, isn't it? The two-tiered justice system. Absolutely. They can get away with it, but we can't.
Well, I mean, in Chicago, a great example is politicians can carry guns and have armed security, but you can't. New Jersey is the same way. In fact, in New Jersey, so I talked to the police and I said, how do you get concealed carry? The only way that you can have a gun on your person walking around in any New Jersey neighborhood is if you have a concealed carry permit. But New Jersey is actually a no-issue state. It's not a real legal distinction. It's just everybody knows New Jersey will not give you one no matter what you do or say unless you are worth a certain amount of money or you have a certain amount of fame. Well, then...
Or certain people who will sign off like the sheriff or like... Exactly.
I think it goes beyond the sheriff.
Okay.
I think in order to get signed off on it, it's like state level or something ridiculous. And they just throw them in the garbage, basically. And there's laws about it because it is unconstitutional. But no matter what you do, they'll just tell you to shove off. Unless you can prove you work with a certain amount of money or you're famous. Then they're like, oh, well, rich and or famous? Sir, you are entitled to a gun.
Well, because they're trying to make the excuse that, well, I'm at more risk and I have, the ability for people to try and attack me because of my value, because of my... But again, though, this is that two-tiered justice system that I was just mentioning. I mean, look, good for thee, not for me. I mean, this shouldn't even be a topic of discussion, Tim. You and I were saying that before. Just go back to constitutional carry and let's just get over it.
I've had situations in Chicago, stories from my friends and things that I've experienced. One story my friends told me is that they were hanging out at the park and they were smoking pot when they were like teenagers. And a cop car pulls up, and it wasn't like a patrol car, but it was very obviously a police vehicle. And my friends freak out, and they're like 16, and they throw their joint or whatever. And the cop laughs, and he goes, dude, we don't care that you're smoking pot in the park. We're looking for this guy. Did you see him? And they're like, no. And he's like, all right, man, later. There was other instances where the cops would come by and see people with pipes and stuff, and then he would be like, toss it, bro, come on. And the dude would like toss it to the side, and he'd be like, you're good. So why is it that those cops, in this instance in Chicago, would be like, I'm not going to arrest some teenagers for what's clearly illegal? But in other circumstances, like, a constitutional right? Heavens, you got to go to prison for that. There are a lot of stories in Chicago of like a dad who tried to get a gun to protect his family because the gun violence is so insane. Lock him up, go to prison. Well, too bad. You try to get them, they deny you, even though it's your constitutional right. You got no criminal record, whatever. So they say, I'll drive to Indiana, 45 minutes, pick one up, and then you go to prison for it.
Or the states where they're like, you can have a gun in your car so long as the ammo is not with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't understand.
That's New Jersey.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Maryland is apparently really,
Maryland
bad.
Yeah, Maryland's. I'll tell you what. So when I first came to the D.C. area, and coming from Florida, this was a massive shock for me. And it was the same thing. I was talking to someone about, I'm going to take my, pistol and some ammo. I'm going to go do some, shooting, things like that at this Maryland gun range. And they're like, what do you mean you're going to take your ammo? I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to save money because, I used to reload. I used to do my own stuff. So, I don't want to pay $10 a box back then, or $15 a box. And they're like, no. Each round that you bring is a felony charge.
Each round.
And I was like, what? I mean, this is just insane.
Well,
it's
look at
okay for me to
DC.
carry my gun, but it wasn't okay. So I'm like, so basically you're propping up this gun shop because now I'm forced to buy their ammo. They can charge whatever they want for it. And I'm like,
You also,
insane.
in order to buy weapons in Maryland, it's particularly complicated. It's bad. And the funny thing is West Virginia is just 20, 30 minutes, depending on where you are in Virginia. In West Virginia, if you're a resident, you walk in, you got to fill out your NICS background check form.
Yep.
Then they send it to the feds. Takes a few minutes, and then you can buy your
Same
weapon.
as Florida.
Got to do a background check. But DC is what's shocking to me because it's federal jurisdiction, and it's one of the most strict jurisdictions in the country. I mean, whether you like the guy or not, or Enrique Tarrio, he had 30-round magazines, standard capacity magazines, and they arrested him for it.
Unloaded.
Jail.
Unloaded.
Yeah, unloaded. Just pieces of plastic with springs. Doesn't matter.
well, and again, I love how people used to throw out this term. It's gun paraphernalia.
What does that mean, a sticker of a gun on your shirt?
Exactly. I mean, how far do you go with that?
I think the issue is, I've said this before. If you don't like the fact that people can have guns, amend the Constitution. But don't start violating the Constitution every single day because you're unhappy with it. It's crazy to me that the Constitution is explicit. I don't care about what the reason is. A well-regulated militia being necessary, sure, fine, whatever. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The reasoning is irrelevant. Yet what do we have?
Agreed.
They've banned everything. I love it when they're like, no one's coming to take your guns. And I'm just like, Waco. Excuse me? That was 30 years ago. Come on.
Beto O'Rourke's exact comment,
Right.
which he's now gone back on.
Yeah.
But his exact comment was, I am coming for your AR-15s.
What an idiot.
I mean, look,
And
and again, if that's not infringement of my Second Amendment rights, what is it?
I honestly think that if you, as in a campaign, declare your intent to violate the Constitution, you should be ineligible.
100% agreed.
That makes sense.
100% agreed.
So when Beto says, I am going to take your guns away, it's like, well, that's a direct statement in violation of the Constitution. You can't be allowed to hold power.
100%
Would you
agreed.
let them run like the next cycle then? Like if they atone for the statement? I would.
It is an interesting point because I'm a
That's a good question.
bit facetious, but yeah, how do you recover from saying you intend to violate people's rights?
Because then what's to prevent you from, once you're elected, from going back on that because you've already shown your true intent, but it just wasn't popular?
And who knows if you're
I mean,
lying
hey-
all the time.
Hey, look.
Well, that's just being a politician.
If you're a felon, you can't own a gun. Okay, well, if you express public intent on a campaign trail to violate the Constitution, someone should be able to file a lawsuit against you, and then it should go to the courts, and the courts should be like,
If for no other reason than
what-
he should know that he violated the Constitution.
I'll tell you what's even worse than that, though. What about the felons who you're not allowed to vote?
I think felons should be allowed to vote. And
I mean,
shoot
that's
guns.
absolutely absurd. At the end of the day, if you go and you serve and you atone for what you've been, essentially prosecuted for, why shouldn't you maintain your constitutional rights and liberties? Why should you not still be able to vote in our elections? Why should your voice not count?
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.